Good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you're watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that's 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. And when you do call, staff will ask for your name and address and the item number that you wish to address and your telephone number. Further instructions will then be provided to call back and join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary Treasurer will unmute you when it is your time to speak. The applicant or agent will then be given an opportunity to explain to the committee the basis of their application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and any 5 minutes will be provided for their presentation. All remarks and questions will be directed to the chair, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with the proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussions. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will then be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant and agent and any other person who has filed such a written request. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the last day to do so will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who receives a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this meeting are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have no regrets this evening. Do I have any declarations of pecuniary interests? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, I'll take requests for deferrals or withdrawals at this time. Oh. Ms. Murray, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if there are any pictures available for the signs posted for our first application tonight on Great Lakes Boulevard. I did not see any, nor did I see any posted on Michigan, which is adjacent to the Great Lakes Boulevard posting. And so if we don't have any pictures and nothing was posted, then I will request a deferral.
Okay. Madam Secretary, have you received a notification that they were posted, and do you have pictures speaking to such?
Madam Chair, I will take a look. Just give me a second. I found the pictures for Great Lakes. 3 of them are posted on the site. So, and they were sent on June 1st.
Is it possible to share those with us so that Ms.
Yes.
Murray can make a decision whether she wants to move forward or request a deferral?
Just a second, I'm just gonna.
Madam Chair, those were not up today.
Okay. I'm trying to remember which day I went by because I didn't see them either. Any discussion on the recommendation for deferral, Mr. Hardcastle?
Do you
I
want?
would just note also for the rest of the committee members on the 11th, they were not present there when I was on site.
Okay, so Ms. Murray, go ahead and move a motion and then the committee will vote on it. I seem to have lost Mr. Talowski. Is he still on? Do you see him? Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, can we wait a
Yes.
couple seconds because I don't see him too.
Okay, let's wait. Mr. Kepo, I
Yep.
see you. I see you. I know that you are here to request a deferral. Just give us a second to deal with this matter and then I'll take care of you.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, do you want me to promote the agent for the first application so you can, if you are moving with deferral, so he's gonna hear
Yes,
that.
yes, you can do that while we wait for Mr. Talowski. And can you message Mr. Talowski and find out
I
if he's
will.
having
I will.
technical difficulties?
Yep. He said he's trying to reboot the internet, so
Okay. All right. Oh, well, we have quorum anyways, so we'll proceed with the first item with in terms of a requested deferral. Mr. Hanford, were you with us from the beginning?
I was, yes.
Oh, okay. So you understand that because the signs were not up there for the prescribed time frame, that there is that risk that not enough notice has been given, and that is what Ms. Murray was saying, and for that reason, she's requesting that we defer the application. Do you know when the signs were posted, just for our?
Yeah, the signs were posted. I don't know the exact date. I apologize, but they were posted prior to June 1st when I believe the pictures were sent from our office to the committee. They would have been up for a number of days since then. No one from our office, from the owner, has removed it. If they're not present, it would have been some third party that came in and removed them, or a weather related. So I apologize for that.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Murray's request and motion is to defer the application. Just make sure that you do repost them because the past 3-4 days they haven't been there. So, and then we'll get you in on the closest agenda. Just speak to the Secretary Treasurer.
Sure.
All those in support of the motion to defer? Okay. The application has been deferred, and you'll see the Secretary Treasurer. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Kepo, your application is CAV 100 of 2022 at 2068 Woodgate Drive, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So you are seeking to request a deferral?
Yes.
Okay. I see that we just received the notes from town staff, and I gather that you're looking to rework some elements of your application and come back and see us at a later date based on their feedback.
Yeah, basically it was a disconnect. We received I think the approval in the process of that for our pool from the pipeline. But we didn't have, we plan to put a shed in the future there or something like that. Yeah. And then, so it was the minor variance. So I'm a rookie at this, apologize, was
oh, no.
Was declined because the pipeline didn't know about the proposed shed. So we're going to defer application to get the approval from the TransCanada pipeline for the cabana shed and then reapply. So it's just another step. Does that make sense? Yes,
very well. Thank you. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred, none opposed. We'll see you at hopefully the next available meeting. You'll just have to check with the Secretary Treasurer when you're ready.
You got it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, have a good night. Okay, we have no consent applications. Our first item, which was Great Lakes Boulevard, that has been deferred. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is CAV 095 of 2022 at 183 Elton Park Road. And I will note that we do have one letter of objection from a Ms. Stephanie Karn. Who is the agent? Ms. Lindsay Bruce. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks Chair, thanks committee for hearing our application tonight. We are here just presenting an application for a minor variance for lot coverage. This is at 183 Elton Park, where we had the house approved fall of 2018. The house has since been constructed and the owners would like to add a small cabana in the rear yard. We did meet the lot coverage for the house, and that did include the covered patio at the back, like the overhang at the back of the house. And so the difference in the coverage that we're going today is just for that new cabana. So we're asking for an increase from 25 to 26.23. We do have support from staff. I noted in the comments. We did have one letter of objection. The neighbor next door, I think, is a little bit concerned with how long the construction's been going on, and hasn't had a conversation with the owner since he hasn't had a conversation with her since receiving this note for the past couple of days. But just to touch on a few of the comments in the letter, the comments related to any drainage issues, we feel that they'll be dealt with a revision of our DESP application. She's also has a concern about the height and the setback from the lot line. We're not seeking variances for the height or the setback to the cabana. And we've also noted the owners planted trees along that lot line, so there will be added privacy and noise screening through a row of cedar trees along there. That's all I have for a presentation for tonight, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Have you reached out to the neighbor to have a discussion?
Yeah, we did. They weren't, I spoke with the owner. We got the notice Friday. I spoke with the owners yesterday, and they tried to reach out today. And unfortunately, I think the owner, Stephanie, she noted in her letter that she had plans today. So I don't think she was home today. So we weren't able to reach her. I have advised the owners to communicate with her going forward for any of these types of concerns, but I just felt that, what we're talking about here at committee today isn't necessarily listed in her concerns for the cabana.
Well, yes, and I mean, we don't want to get into disputes between neighbors, but it's always nice for the neighbors to get along and for things to move smoothly. Were you subject to a DESP in the construction?
Yes, we were. We went through DSP for the house, and we will need to get a revision for it for the cabana.
Okay, so just for the knowledge of the public, in case Miss Stephanie is listening, the development engineering site plan procedure will take care of grading issues and water management and all that. So one of her concerns are the difference in grading between your property and hers. So that will be managed through there. Everything else, I urge you to just work with your neighbor in order to deal with any outstanding issues and any concerns that she may have. Ms. Murray, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, if we could share with the public, of course, the letter of concern.
Ms. Murray, we lost you.
To install TV, and so there's concern about noise, but it's my understanding that of course there's bylaw to deal with noise, and it can be dealt with through that. I don't know if the town wishes to comment, but that should also be of note. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Buckfield, do you have anything to add?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think Ms. Murray covered it in mentioning that there's a noise bylaw that pertains to backyard noise. So if there persists to be an issue, like she said, with the TV or anything like that in the rear, that would be the mechanism in which to provide recourse. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions of the applicant before we take them out into committee? Is Ms. Karn in the meeting, Madam Secretary Treasurer? Has she indicated whether she would like to speak to the committee?
Madam Chair, I don't see her in attendance and present to this meeting.
Okay, very well. So
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Murray.
The neighbor notes that she has high school graduation tonight, so cannot be in attendance.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that. Thank you. So if we're ready to take the matter into committee, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the application as applied for, Also noting that the town's written staff report is in favor of the application. Also noting that there was one written objection to the application. Noting though that the agent kind of addressed some of the issues of that letter, as has town staff with regards to the height. It was not a one of the variances, as well as there's bylaws there as far as dealing with noise. And I think some of the other elements of that letter were addressing the other construction that was happening on site that was not related to this specific accessory building. There were no written or oral support from the public, but I do want to move the motion in favor of the application, finding that it is minor in nature and does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Doing so, I would like to move it with the following conditions. Sorry, just one sec. That the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated April 19th, 2022, and elevation drawings dated September 17th, 2021. And the second condition, our standard, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, committee.
Okay, have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Application CAV is 096 of 2022 at 1031 John Layard Circle. Again, it's 096 of 2022 at 1031 John Layard Circle. I have Ms. Stephanie Medviva as the agent. If you are interested in speaking to this item on our agenda, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. Go ahead, Ms. Medviva.
Thank you very much. If I could have the next slide, please. So the property in question is municipally addressed as 1031 John Layard Circle. It's on the east side of John Layard Circle within an established and evolving neighborhood within the town. Next slide, please. The owner is seeking approval to construct a rear yard cabana. The cabana is approximately 22.5 square meters in size. The overall design has been planned and designed to be in conformance with the zoning bylaw to the greatest extent possible. Having said this, there are 2 variances that are required. Those are displayed in front of you. One being a rear yard, reduced rear yard setback and a reduced interior side yard setback. Next slide, please. So the cabana has been positioned to be 2 meters from the existing dwelling. It's also within the rear yard. It has been positioned and designed to be an extension of the outdoor living environment and enjoyment of the backyard. Next slide, please. And here are just some elevations. So just a few highlights in addition to what is provided in the submission cover letter. There are no windows, which would address privacy and overlook concerns. Next slide, please. And it has also been designed to open onto the backyard. As outlined in our submission letter, it's my opinion that it meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Medviva. Are there any questions or comments or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. If there's no one here that has showed interest in speaking to this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer, we'll take the matter into committee.
There is nobody.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't find my unmute button. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials including the written staff report and having observed the presentation by the applicant, I am satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the four tests of the act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval, finding that the variance conforms to the four tests of the act. The motion should be subject to two conditions, those being that the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated April 7th, 2022, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present or with respect to this matter, and no letters provided with respect to this matter either.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Harkas. So is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. You too.
Application CAV 097 of 2022 at 2305 Hickson Street. Again, that's application 097 of 2022 at 2305 Hickson Street. If there's anyone who's interested in speaking to this matter, please call 905-815-6095. I have Mr. Kieran as our agent.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Kieran.
Good evening, members of the committee. Madam Chairperson, let me just get my camera on here. Okay, good evening, everybody. Okay, my name is Joris Kieran. I'm the agent for the applicant. I'll be presenting a short presentation just to outline the variances we're seeking. Slide 1, we're seeking a total of 4 variances. And on slide 1, you'll see the first 2 identified. So we have the front yard setback, which is reduced to better align with the house to the east. Or if you're looking at the front of the house, or the house to the left, it is a corner lot. The existing house is set quite far back, so this really just brings it into a normal front yard situation, in our opinion. The other variance is for a few window wells that will be larger than what's permitted under the current and new bylaw. This is a side yard, so we have lots of space for grading and drainage, and the larger window wells shouldn't be an issue. Slide 2, please. So the other two variances are for increased garage area. It is a larger property, and the owner, our client, did want a 3-car garage, so we've provided that on this plan. It's a 2-car garage from the front, so that's what's visible from the street. A third tandem bay is there, which you see on this slide, and it's highlighted. And in addition to that, there's a little bit of storage. So instead of having a shed, this is just providing it inside, internal to the house. And then we're also seeking a variance for a little bit of additional RFA floor area. And I usually try to just indicate where that is, emanating from. And in this case, it would be these 2 areas. So a little bit of a sitting area in the primary bedroom, as well as a study for work from home purposes, and an elevator for mobility, future mobility considerations. Yeah, those are the 4 variances. Happy to answer any questions if there are any from the committee. Oh, sorry. I did also want to quickly show slide 3, which is a color rendering of the property, just so the committee can see that wasn't included with the package that we submitted because it wasn't available at that time. So this just gives a little bit of a better visual on what's being proposed. You can see the 2-car garage, 1.5-story massing, more or less. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. If no one has showed interest in speaking to this application, we can take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Tulowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I find this to be very sensitive design, both in terms of the older neighborhood that it's being placed in and in relation to the house next to it. Front yard variance is actually a better scenario than if they'd complied with the bylaw, and I don't find any impact being created by the remaining variances. So I would move that the application be approved as applied for, finding it meets the tests of the Planning Act. I'd also note that there is no objections from the community, and I would make that approval subject to the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings dated April 28th, 2022, and that the approval expire if a permit hasn't issued within 2 years.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Is there a recommendation, a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Application CAV 098 of 2022 at 1260 Richards Crescent. Again, that is application CAV 098 of 2022 at 1260 Richards Crescent. I will note that we do have 2 letters of objection with this application from Mr. Tariq Mansour and Ministrel Jennifer. Mr. Dargan, go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dan Achimovich. I am the agent for this property at 1260 Richards Crescent. Since receiving the planning report that supports variance number 1, but does not support variance number 2 regarding the rear setback for the deck, we have been working with the planning department, Ms. Catherine Buckerfield, as well as the owners, on revision or actually removal of variance number 2. So I'm actually here asking for approval for variance number 1 only. Okay, if you could potentially scroll down to the proposed site plan, please, which is A1.1. And I'm not sure if this is going to be the latest, greatest site plan. So this is the survey. If you can continue 1 down, please. Correct. Actually, this is the updated version. If you could potentially scroll into or zoom into the proposed site plan on the right-hand side, you will notice that this diagram basically depicts the existing home footprint in the dark gray. The light gray is the proposed addition, which is supported by the planning department. That is basically our variance number 1, because that addition is past the rear setback of this property. The proposed deck that you're seeing on this diagram is not the one that we applied with. The proposed deck that we applied with actually went just a tiny little bit past the 1.5 meter rear setback. We have actually significantly decreased this rear deck now. If you compare the diagram that's on the screen compared to the one that we submitted with, this deck is probably, I would suggest, at least half of the size. So not only did we shrink it from the left, we also pulled it back from the back of the house as well. It used to be 12 feet out from the back of the new addition. Now it's back to 9 feet or 2.74 meters, as you can see on this current diagram that we're looking at. The owner also had a chance to speak to one of the people objecting. I believe it's Mr. Tariq Mansour, and they walked the site together. The feedback that I received from the owner was that Mr. Mansour did not realize that this addition is not as great or as large as it appears on this diagram, or what he thought it would be. And verbally, I believe that there was support for this. Again, I cannot confirm this. This is simply what I'm hearing from the owner. For that reason, I believe that this application is this one variance that we're asking for. We're hoping that you will agree with the planning department and approve this one variance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simovich. Any questions? Ms. Murray, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, to town staff. I struggle with the need to be expedient, with the need to be accurate and provide committee with accurate drawings. So the applicant would have had staff notes on this ahead of time. And yet we're being asked to approve variance 1 with drawings and site plan that are now no longer accurate. So I would probably put forward a motion to deny the request and that we come back with accurate drawings so that the committee can actually approve something that they can look at and that is current. Those are my comments. I'm happy to welcome anything that my colleagues have to say or that Ms. Buckerfield can share.
Ms. Buckerfield?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. This is completely your decision as the committee in terms of what materials you feel comfortable reviewing. In terms of reviewing, taking a look at this specific issue, I've seen in the past variances requested to be removed if they no longer pertain to or can comply. And in this situation, he was demonstrating something that was further within the realm of the bylaw. So it's up to your discretion whether you're comfortable with what's being displayed today and the demonstration that variance is no longer required.
Mr. Simovich, have you submitted new drawings to town staff to indicate that you're dropping variance 2 and how it relates to the drawings that we currently have as a committee?
Correct, yeah. I mean, if I could just comment on Ms. Murray's response. Basically, we were advised on Friday afternoon, I believe, is when we received the first set of comments, one being positive, one being negative. And since then, we have been working as fast as possible over the last couple of days. And fortunately, Ms. Buckerfield has been working with us and responding to us in as fast of a manner as we possibly could. And there is no issues with the accuracy of the drawings. All we have done is we have reduced the size of the deck to eliminate the variance. Everything else is exactly how it was. And once again, we have been trying very hard to appease the neighbors, in addition to trying to make this application as favorable to the planning department as it is to the neighboring community.
Have you submitted in the package that you've just shown us in terms of your presentation, is there a side-by-side view of the differences in the drawings that have come about so far?
Okay, so if you take a look at the package that you have versus the one that's up on the screen, the only difference, once again, it's the size of the deck. The deck is no longer past the rear setback. It's about half the size. It's been shrunken from the left and from the back. So I really, I believe that we have been working very hard in order to eliminate the variance and make this a more favorable application. At this stage, the only variance that we're asking for is the rear setback for the addition, which already has planning department support.
Okay, thank you for your clarification. Are there any other comments or discussion on the matter? If we can just bring back into panel. Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I view the applicant is following the advice from town staff with regards to what the town would like to see based on the application that has been presented. As well, I'm noting that with regards to the drawings that have been submitted, if we are to approve, they are accurate with regards to variance 1. So personally, I am comfortable with regards to, a motion that does reflect, to the satisfaction of the director of planning, just because, when an applicant is demonstrating that they are willing to work with the town to revise the construction that they're doing, and we're just down to the drawings on a variance that's being removed, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that, the drawings to be to the satisfaction of the director of planning. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Tulowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, echo Mr. Flemington's comments. We shouldn't punish an applicant for trying to do the right thing because it doesn't quite fit our preferred procedure. But beyond that, if the applicant, argued for variance number 2 and the committee followed the staff recommendation, we'd have the exact same situation. An approval of variance number 1 with the site plan and elevations to the satisfaction of the director of planning. What we're being asked to do right now is deal with an amended application that only has 1 variance, to approve that with the site plan elevations to the satisfaction of the director of planning. So it just doesn't make sense to me to send the applicant back, to come back and try again for the exact same thing that we're being asked to do tonight, and ironically the exact same thing that the staff report suggests that we should do. I'm happy to deal with this application.
Agreed. Okay. If there are no further comments, Madam Secretary Treasurer, has Mr. Mansour or Ms. Minstrel asked to speak to the application?
Madam Chair, I do see somebody in attendance, Mr. Minstrel, but they need to raise a hand if they want to speak.
Okay. Mr. Minstrel, if...
yes, and sorry, Madam Chair, I'm going to promote them and they want to speak.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Hi. I think our main concern is a privacy issue with the house being set back further and the deck that was being planned. The backyards are very open. There's no fences between backyards. And right now, the way our houses are situated, no one can see each other's patios into their backyards. And with the house being set back further and the deck added onto the back,
it's the grading as well.
We would no longer have privacy in our backyard. So I think that was our main concern, especially with the deck that was going on.
Okay. Anything else before we allow Mr. Simovic to answer and then take the matter into committee?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Mr. Simovic, are you subject to DESP?
I'm honestly not sure about that.
Ms. Buckerfield, do you know if this property development?
Sorry, I could take myself off mute. I believe that I need to just confirm the specific property. I think this one might not have been, but they've been, they would still need a site alteration permit, which would require review, and town staff would still be paying attention to what's happening at the rear of the property. And it's also subject to CH, so Halton Conservation, and they've reviewed the property as well in terms of the floodplains at the rear. So there's been review and discussion from engineering on this property.
Okay, so what I'm talking about these are processes that would deal with grading issues that you may have, and and floodplains and all of that. In the meantime, while Ms. Buckerfield is reviewing, Mr. Simovich, do you want to comment on the neighbors' concerns?
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate the comments from the neighbors who are located at 221, I believe, which is actually, if you look at the site plan again, if you don't mind. Obviously, we visited the site and we understand the situation. And if you take a look at this site plan, basically the way these properties are sort of arranged about this open field or plateau. This property has quite a bit of 1260 has quite a bit of land behind it. And obviously the neighbors at 221 and 217, the two families that have objected to this application share that the views and the openness, and for sure it is one big open field, and but once again we took their concerns into consideration. That's exactly part of the reason why we did what we did while working with Ms. Buckerfield. We understand, and the homeowners at 1260 actually understand the privacy concerns, and for that reason they've shrank the deck to pretty much the size that they have now at the back of their existing home. If you look at the right just to the left is that existing plan. It shows existing deck to be demolished, and you can see its size in a dashed outline on just on the left hand side. It's actually visible. Yep, thank you. And the proposed deck has now been, like I said, shrunken to less than 50% of what we had initially proposed. And the reason for that is the owners of 1260 understand everyone's privacy concerns. They do not plan to have large gatherings and parties up at an elevated plateau. They've decided to basically just make the deck big enough in order to have a barbecue, because that's where their kitchen is. And for larger family gatherings, they've decided to create a patio at grade, which would greatly decrease any privacy issues from that perspective, which is pretty much what they have now, except for the addition towards the back. And that's exactly why we did what we did. We understand the concerns of the neighborhood.
Okay, very well, thank you. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Mr. Flemington, go ahead.
For clarification, Madam Chair, moving this motion with deleting variance 2, so I understand that. With regards to what's proposed, as far as them downsizing the size of the deck that is being constructed, based on that size, am I understanding that there would not be a variance required for that size of deck? So therefore, it wouldn't be a variance that is requested. So I guess that's a question to town staff.
Through you, Madam Chair, I first want to just pull back to the DESP question. I checked. They are, in fact, subject to the development engineering site plan process. So engineering staff will be reviewing for drainage and grading on the property and for stormwater management. I also wanted to clarify that I think that their concern when they said grade was the fact that it's lower grade at the rear. So that makes the deck higher. And I think that might have been their concern that they were referring to. And then back to Mr. Flemington's question related to the variance. So I think at this point, to add clarity, is that they're reducing the rear yard setback. The deck is measured a 1.5 meter projection from the rear yard setback. So if the rear yard setback is set further back, the deck as a result can be 1.5 meters from that point. With the setback that's being proposed, the deck fully fits within the variant, within that permission, and they've actually made it smaller than what they could do as of right in the situation to demonstrate that they are trying their best to reduce the impact, but they are interrelated. So I want to make that very clear. But in this situation, the deck will not require variance based on what they've presented today at the meeting. I'm happy to answer any more questions related to that.
Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. I think that, in all manners of when neighbors are constructing spaces and doing the neighborly thing as far as having discussions. I know that this applicant is making changes based on what the advice has been of the town. But when you hear, the neighbors may have some issues with regards to privacy, I know that there are things that can be, and I know it's not this committee that does that, but I know that there are things that could be constructed on the deck as far as providing privacy shields through ivies or what have you. So I would just, because I'm okay with the motion, or I'm okay with the application, but I think that the neighborly thing would be to address those concerns, because I think there's other ways of dealing with the privacy issue when it's no longer a variance that the neighbors can object to with regards to the deck, noting though that they are interrelated as the town staff has articulated. So that's just my comments.
No, you're right, Mr. Flemington. The construction of backyard amenities as of right has nothing to do with our application. And Mr. Nasimovich, you should have your client discuss these neighboring issues with the neighbors and work out the best way to address them. In the meantime, if there are no further items of clarification or questions, we can open it and take it into committee for a suggested motion. And just as a clarification, this would be the time, Ms. Murray, I know you voiced your opinion and we've had this discussion in the open forum, but this would be the time if you wanted to make a motion to deal with this application in a different manner. This would be the time. I did not put your concerns to the side. We did have that discussion, but in the actual procedure, this would be the time for you to make a motion if you so choose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be making a motion.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to move a motion on the matter? Mr. Tulowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm going to move that the application as amended to remove variance number 2 be approved, finding that it meets the test of the Planning Act. I would note that there is objection from the neighbors. When I look at the application, the variance is not causing the impact that the neighbors are concerned about. And I note on the revised plan that the deck is actually just off the fully complying part of the addition that complies with the rear yard setback. It's the other piece of the addition that's in front of the committee. And while I understand the neighbor's concern, I don't see that the variance we're being asked to approve causes that impact, and that deck could be built without coming for the variance for the addition. Having said that, my approval recommendation will come with the conditions that the elevation and site plan be to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. That gives the applicant the ability to, let's say, do the right thing or the neighborly thing and potentially work with the neighbors for harmony in the neighborhood to add something, as Mr. Flemington had indicated. And I'd also make the approval subject to the variance lapsing if a building permit hasn't issued within 2 years.
Okay. And you did mention that the addition to be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. All those opposed? Okay. The application has been approved, 1 opposed. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Okay, application CAV 099 of 2022 at 1320 Secord Avenue. Again, it's application 99 of 2022 at 1320 Secord Avenue. And I have Mr. Pamir Rafiq as the agent for this application. This is for the construction of an accessory building, pool cabana on the property.
Oh. Hello.
Good evening.
Madam Chair, members. Something's happening. Okay. Okay, so the variance that we're applying for is a single variance for a lot for a cabana that we're proposing in the rear yard of this property. The variance is related to the lot coverage. We're asking for a little bit extra there, 2.93% extra, in addition to the 25% that is already allowed. So the main concern, obviously, we believe that we're in line with the general intent of the bylaw. The main concern when it comes to the lot coverage is to control the mass of the dwelling. The dwelling obviously meets the zoning bylaw regulations. It's already constructed and will be untouched with this proposal. So actually, if you don't mind switching to a further page, then you'll see the architectural site plan. Is it possible to switch to further page? Yeah, right there. So you see that the cabana will actually not be visible from the street. You see the property is a corner lot, Secord Avenue and the other street that's to the right of the property. Those are the two streets. And the cabana is on the far back corner, away from the street, not visible from there. It also does not impact, we believe, does not impact the neighboring properties as it meets the zoning regulations when it comes to the height. It doesn't tower over the neighboring properties. Obviously, the surface is at grade, so there are no privacy issues there to peek over anything. And all of the items that I just mentioned here are also identified by the committee, by the planning staff, and they recommend support for this variance. We believe that it's minor in nature, and that is we received no objections from the planning staff. They recommend the same thing. Therefore, we hope to receive your approval today.
Thank you. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Rafiq at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if there's no one that has called in with interest in this application, we can take the matter into committee.
There is no public.
Very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials and heard the applicant's presentation and reviewed the written staff report, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the four tests of the Act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to two conditions, those being the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings submitted with the application on April 27th, 2022, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision. I would note that there were no presentations from the public with respect to this matter.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night.
Good evening. Take care.
Application CAV 101 at 408 Lakeshore Road West. Again, this is application CAV 101 of 2022 at 408 Lakeshore Road West. If you are interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I have Julie Odansky as the agent.
Madam Chair, it's Peter Giordano.
Okay. Mr. Giordano, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We're here today requesting your consideration on 4 variance items. Can I ask the moderator to go to page 2, please? The context map shown on your screen shows the unique length of our property and positioning of the subject property. The stars on the map indicate 3 letters of support from adjacent neighbors. Next slide, please. The context aerial map on display shows more accurately the relationship between the subject properties and the neighbors on either side. I'll describe this a little further as we move along. What I would point out on this view is that the proposed property is at a midpoint between the front yard setbacks of the 2 neighbors, number 410 and number 396. Slide number 4, please. So this slide shows you the existing topo survey with a small photo in the upper left-hand corner, highlighting the large side-loaded garage and raised pool terrace to the immediate right of the property. Slide number 5, please. Since 3 of our 4 variances items are front yard setback, driveway width, and building length, this slide shows you the extensive development on either side of our property and the impact they have on our lot. It's more the impact that they will have on us than what we will have on them. Slide number 6, please. So the next 4 slides are 3D elevations. If you can just scroll through the next, that's the front elevation. Next slide, please. Right side elevation that faces the neighbor with the 4-car side-loaded garage and raised terrace, pool terrace that overlooks our property. Next slide, please. This is the rear elevation. One of our variances is the height of the cabana. You'll notice in progressive slides that we look at that the height of the cabana is one of the variance items, but in fact, we're using it to screen the neighboring property, which does have a large overlook condition. And again, I'll show you some more photos as we move along. Next slide, please. This is a pretty standard elevation. It's the left side elevation. It's a heavily screened property on that side. And then they have a side loaded cabana that extends beyond the back of our house as well. Next slide, please. Some more 3D views, again, just emphasizing the effect that the cabana will have on presenting a screen on the adjacent property. Next slide, please. So the summary of the 4 items that we're requesting. First is the maximum driveway width, 9 meters, where 13.8 meters is being requested. As you can see, that only happens on one particular section. There's a hammerhead that allows a turnaround on the end there, and that request creates the variance item number 1. Variance item number 2 is the maximum dwelling depth. The longest depth is from the front step projection of the front porch to the furthest projection at the rear covered deck that's at the back of the property. I would like to point out that The staggering footprint of the house itself creates a building depth that starts on the far right side at 18.53 meters, and then progressively gets a little higher. Middle of the property is 20.27, and then at the midspan, and then at the far left, it increases to 22.61. That's from the front wall of the house to the furthest rear projection at the rear of the house. I would point out that the lot is 342 feet deep, and we have a proposed front yard setback of 28.5, or approximately 93 feet from the front property line. Again, you'll see a partial footprint elevations of the two neighbors, and we're right at about the mid transition point between those two neighbors. Next slide, please. This is the cabana that we're proposing on the rear, and the height that we're asking for is 5.72 meters, I believe that is, and 4 meters is what we're allowed. Because the design of the cabana is a hip design, it's really the triangulated portion at the highest point that exceeds in the height. The upper right corner is the view that the cabana is facing. So the back of the cabana is the screen portion. That's the 4-car side-loaded garage from the neighbor at 410. The upper section above the garage is actually a pool terrace. So that's an upper pool terrace that extends well into the rear of their yard and overlooks our yard. Next slide, please. Don't want to emphasize it too much more, but these are additional photos from that rear right side of the overlook condition that overlooks our yard. Next slide, please. A few shots of the adjacent property, 410 to the upper right corner. In the upper middle section is the neighbor directly to the left of us, heavily screened on that side. And then the other houses are just general houses on the other side of the boulevard at the rear of the house. In summary, our proposed building complies with RFA coverage, side yard setbacks, and building height. Planning support staff reports and all department conditions support our application. Last minute addendum from Oakville Hydro is acknowledged, and we'll take every necessary precaution when working near the easement that bisects the front of our property. In conclusion, we believe the variance items to be minor and appropriate, passing the 4 tests of Section 45 of the Planning Act. We accept the general conditions, and thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Giordano. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this point? I do note that you do have 3 letters of support from a Denise Kula, and Umesh Patel, and a Paul and Claire Quintanilla. If there are no questions and no one has called in to speak to this application, we can take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Through you, Madam Chair, to town staff, please, and thank you. We're one of the conditions that is put forward by town staff is that the final that it be built in general accordance with the final approved site plan and elevation drawings to the satisfaction of Director of Planning. Is there a reason why we can't cite those plans at this time? What is it that requires further review that we can't make a similar recommendation as we have for other variances?
Through you, Madam Chair, typically we've done this in the past when we have applications that are currently going through site plan application. It's going through that process where there's a thorough review through engineering staff, urban design, landscape, all the different staff are in the process of reviewing, and typically we have them with the final approved site plan so that all the plans are consistent. you have the discretion of the variant of the conditions that you want to put forth. There's always a risk for the applicant that if any changes are required through the further circulations of their site plan, that coming in for committee of adjustment at this point, if they're not close enough to the plans today, that they have to come back, and we would hold them to that. That's just been the general process that we've taken, is that when something's in site plan, we tie them to the final approved site plan drawings. Did that add clarity, or would you like me to speak to that further?
Well, just to some degree, but then it begs the question as to why all the recommended conditions don't read that way.
Because other ones are not subject to site plan. So we
thank
need to tie them to the plans that are here today, but it's still to your discretion as the committee to determine what conditions are appropriate to apply.
Any other questions or items of clarification? Okay. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
To thank the applicant this evening. It was a great presentation, very well illustrated. And of course, seeing the overlook and the use of the cabana to provide privacy and illustrating that was extremely helpful. Also helpful and of note are the letters of support from the neighbors. So thank you for that. Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note is in support of the variances requested, taking into consideration the excellent presentation by Mr. Giordano this evening, noting that there were no written or oral objections at this time, but rather 3 neighbors in support of this project. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application subject to the following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the final approved site plan and elevation drawings to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation?
Through Madam Chair, there is another condition too. 2 years condition.
Apologies, Madam Chair. I will also add that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. Thank you.
Very well. Again, is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Application CAV 102 of 2022 at 1346 Sedgwick Crescent. Again, it's CAV 102 of 2022 at 1346 Sedgwick Crescent. We have Mr. Heater.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chairman, committee members. Jason Heater on behalf of my clients at 1346 Sedgwick. Seeking a variance, if we can go to the next slide, please. Variance related to coverage for a pool cabana. There's no GFA related to this cabana. It's really more of a covered roof outdoor pavilion. It's open on 3 of 4 sides. It meets the requirements for building height and all setbacks. If you can go to the next slide. Perfect. It's just that hatched area down next to the pool. It's tucked in the back corner behind a tall stand of mature trees, so no real concerns for neighboring properties. Yeah, I think that's about the extent of it. We feel that it meets the 4 tests and fits in nicely on the property. I did note that the fire, there was a comment about a shed. I think that's just a holdover on the old site plan. There was a shed on the left-hand setback that's been removed. So there's full access to the backyard through a walkway up the side of the house there. I'm willing to answer any questions whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Staff also mentions that there will be a DSP agreement that will be required to be registered on the property, and that's in your conditions as well.
Yes, correct. And I think there was, yeah, we submitted this afternoon 4 letters of support from local residents as well. So.
Okay. Any questions?
Madam Chair,
yes.
Sorry, would you advise the agent to send to us because we haven't received by 4:30 p.m. today?
Okay.
I will, yeah, I will resend them. They were sent, yeah, they were sent at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I will resend.
Any comments, questions before we take them out into committee? Okay. I see none. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Flemington, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the written submission by the applicant, as well as the town staff report noting that it is in support of the application. Also taking into account the presentation made this evening, noting that there were no written or oral objections to the application. I am prepared to move a motion in support of the application, finding that it does meet all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I would like to move it with the following 2 conditions. The first one being that the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated April 19th, 2022. Subject to the accessory building being located outside the remnant channel to the satisfaction of the Director of Transportation and Development Engineering. And our second condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? Okay. The application has been approved, 1 opposed.
Madam Chair, I froze again. I was in favor.
Oh, you were in favor. Okay. All those, application has been approved, none opposed. Madam Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Okay. The last item on our agenda is CAV 103 of 2022 at 1509 Pembroke Drive. Again, it's CAV 103 of 2022 at 1509 Pembroke Drive. Mr. Dome, how are you?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joe Dome, 133 Torresdale Avenue, agent for the owner. This is a fairly straightforward application. There's only 1 variance requested regarding the proposed front yard setback of 7.2 meters. We feel that the impact is mitigated by the fact that this variance only pertains to the front covered porch, while the proposed 2-story dwelling itself meets the bylaws and is consistent with many neighboring newer builds. Planning is in support of the application as shown on file, and there's no neighbor opposition. Overall, we feel this application is reasonable and minor in nature, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Dome. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Okay, I think we lost Mr. Talowski again. Who would like to move a motion on this recommendation? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff are in support of. I've taken note of the comments by the applicant this evening in the presentation. I note that there were no written or oral objections as far as I know of at this time. I am satisfied the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application subject to the following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated March 15th, 2021, and elevation drawings dated April 5th, 2022, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good night. The next item on our agenda is the minutes for May 31st that need to be confirmed. I'd like to move a motion to confirm those minutes. Thank you, Ms. Murray. And then motion for adjournment. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. And we are adjourned at 8:22.